Welcome to our WatchOS course from Eduonics. My name is Brett, and in this lecture we're going to see how to send user info data. This is data that you would send from a user engagement. So the user is doing something that causes a transfer to occur from the iPhone to the watch or from the watch to the iPhone. So before, with application context, we're letting the application kind of manage the transfer of that data in the background without user involvement needing to go on. And that kind of transfer implies that you've got something going on in the background that's pulling data or getting refreshes of data. So in this case, with user info, we're going to let the user do something, and based on their particular action or actions, we were going to then send data over. Now, this being a demo, we're going to stick with clicking buttons to send that data over. And so what I'm going to do is start on the iPhone side with a send, and then we'll work on the receive for the watch. So the watch can tell us it is getting that data. So down here in our send user info, I want to go ahead and start creating something for sending this data. So I'm going to create a dictionary. This is all going to be very similar to what we did with application context. And then I'm going to do user info from iPhone. And I'm using this UI key so it can be a different key than what is happening with application context. All right, so next what I want to do is go ahead and create that transfer. So I am going to do user info transfer equals WC session default session transfer user info. And I'll drop in user info. And then from here, I want to go ahead and just print something out that this went across. So I am going to just say something like user info transferred. And this variable that I'm getting back is actually going to have a few things on it that we can check as well. So I'm just going to print that out, and then we can take a look at what all comes with that. Now, another thing I can do is check the queue, because this will create a queue of user info objects, and I can see what there is in there, and if there are some, I can loop through them, but I'm just going to print them out in this case. So I'm going to capture transfers. It's going to be a WC session default session, and I am going to do outstanding user info transfers, and from here I'll just print them. User info transfers, and that'll be transfers. All right, so that is all we need to do on the iPhone side. And if you remember from earlier work, we set this up so that we just call send data. So we have a button down here. Let's see, do we have a button for this? Well, actually what we're going to do is swap out this right here for user info. So now we can click this same button, and it's going to engage our user info method right here. Okay, so for the watch, we need to get a receive on this side. So if I scroll down, we have application context. We can add a mark for user info. And what I want to do is a session, and then we're going to did receive user info. So that's right there. And I am going to do, I can just do context on this. I'll get user info. We know we're getting UI key, and then I can print user info received at watch. And I'm just going to print this context out, actually, which is just going to be a string for us in this case. And that should work. So now what I need to do is deploy both of these onto the simulator. So I'm going to start with the watch, and then I'll go ahead with the iPhone as well. So then we'll have all fresh code for both of these. Okay, so I think I've got them both running, and I don't know if in this case they're going to be paired. So I'm just going to go ahead and send data from the phone and see what kind of print output we get. Okay, so here's our transfers. So remember, we had this variable we captured called transfers, which is this. So we have user info transferred. So there, we also had this variable here, user info transfer. All right, so that is what's coming out of that variable. So here's the user info transfers, and let's see. Okay, so here's the breakdown of those two. I'm going to raise this up a little bit. All right, so here's the first one, user info transferred, and we get this variable here with some information. So transferring is yes, has user info, there's a no, so these are different parameters we can check off of this variable here. Then we did the transfers, and that is this here, that printout there. So transferring, yes. Has user info, yes. So there's more things we can check on that to see what the status of our transfers are. Now the watch is quiet. We're not going to see those printouts, so we're going to go ahead and stop everything and put the watch on to a debug so we can see its printouts. And we'll also start the iPhone app so we can then have the data being received on the iPhone. So if I go ahead and bring up the simulator again, run the watch, send, and then this is going to the watch. So let's see. I'm going to do a send, data sent to iPhone. So send back to the watch. So we see this is getting from the watch to the iPhone, and I think that button there on the watch is, we probably didn't update that. So yeah, so that's what's going on here. That needs to be updated. And actually, I'm going to comment this out. So on the watch side, here's what happens if you try to do the do, let, try, catch with the user info. I'm going to do transfer user info, and I'll drop in context. So the watch is not going to like this, or specifically Swift is not going to like us using it in this pattern. And here's what it has to say. No calls, throwing functions occur within try. So this does work inside of this block. This does not. So what we can do is just pull this out, bring that back in, and I can just comment out this code here and add that, and go ahead and get the dictionary again. And I want a UI key testing user info from watch. Okay. And I can go ahead and print, so we'll know. So user info sent to iPhone. So we'll change this and run. Actually, we don't need the try. This is all we need. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh that and get that change onto the simulator and bring up the iPhone. Okay, so send to the iPhone, user info sent, so that was triggered. And then I can take send data, so it's going to send user info from the iPhone to the watch. So what we're waiting for is a printout that the data was received on the watch side. See, try this once more. Because I see now nothing's changing inside of the iPhone either. And I think the watch simulator is going to freeze now, so I'll have to stop it. They're definitely not perfect. So I'm going to try one more time in the simulator, bring up the watch, and now bring up the iPhone. Okay, so sending data to the iPhone. And what I'm trying to do is let this get received by the iPhone, and nothing's going to print out on the iPhone side because we don't have that receive method. And I'm going to go ahead and send data to the watch. We do have a receive on the watch, and that's what I'm wanting it to print that part out. I'm not seeing anything for the watch yet. So let's see, we have this here for the watch. We have UI key, which should work. And in our view controller, We also have UI key, but we don't have any communication. All right, so in this case, I know all of this is firing. Just don't know why we're not getting it on the watch yet. Go ahead and stop and do a print here. Start of user info send and deploy that. Bring up the watch simulator, run this, and actually where I have this print, that's not going to work. That's on the watch side. So what I want is, let's see, we have this. So I'm going to do print start user info send from iPhone and run that. Bring up the watch, run it also. Let's see, we have the simulator. All right, bring the watch up. The watch is stuck. Try that again. I guess I'll have to deploy this watch. So I'll go ahead and do that. All right, so now we can go into the simulator, send data, and user info receive the watch. So likely what was happening on the watch is maybe the latest code was not deployed, although it looked like I had deployed it. So now we have user info getting received on the watch. So how about having it received on the iPhone? So we're going to do a session did receive user info, and all we're going to do here is print the entire object. So we're going to have user info received at iPhone, and we'll just print it, user info. And now if we go to the watch, so we are receiving, we're not sending anything. Let's see, yeah, we are here. So I think that completes the loop. I need to get the latest iPhone deployed because of the code change that we just made, and I'm going to do that now. Here's the watch, open this. So we should see the printout if the data comes across to the iPhone, and there it is. User info received an iPhone, so send data back to the watch, which we're not going to see anything at this point. We need to stop the iPhone, start the watch if we want to see the receive at the watch end. And I am going to open up the iPhone, send, and there it is. So now we have a full loop with the user info. So user info received at watch. So now we can send and receive user info as well as application context across from the watch to the iPhone, and then from the iPhone back to the watch.